All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to uncover exactly why that hyper-optimized, glowing smart ring on your finger might actually be measuring the exact wrong metrics for your overall well-being. Look, we're living in this era where we are completely obsessed with self-optimization, right? Every heartbeat, every step, every single sleep cycle is tracked, graphed, and judged. But what if this constant, relentless monitoring is actually working against us?
Let's start with a frustration that I think is highly relatable. Picture this. You wake up, you roll over, check your device, and boom, you're greeted by an elite 94% sleep readiness score. Your health app is telling you your cardiorespiratory fitness is top tier. Biologically speaking, you are an optimized machine. And yet, as you look at your calendar for the day, you feel this deep, undeniable sense of existential dread. You know the feeling? How is it possible that your physical battery is at 100%, but you still feel entirely depleted?
Well, this disconnect highlights the massive blind spot of modern self-optimization. Researchers are actually calling this phenomenon data fetishism. It's essentially a cognitive bias where we start treating our bodies like math equations to be solved. We prioritize objective, numerical data as the absolute supreme truth, and in the process, we completely dismiss our actual, lived experience as if it's just unreliable noise. We focus purely on the biology and totally ignore how we actually feel.
Which brings us to Section 1, the high cost of tracking, and what happens when this data becomes genuinely harmful.
Because guys, this isn't just some niche aesthetic trend. The scale of this obsession is absolutely massive. A recent study of a general population sample showed that around 36% of people are regularly using sleep trackers. Think about that. Over a third of us have literally transformed sleep, which is supposed to be this completely passive, restorative biological function, into an active, high-stakes daily performance evaluation.
And this hyperfixation has actually birthed a brand new clinical condition. It's called orthosomnia. Coined by researchers at Rush University Medical School, orthosomnia is this perfectionist, incredibly unhealthy preoccupation with achieving the perfect sleep tracking metrics. So instead of helping you recover, the tracker itself becomes the main source of your stress.
We see the dangers of this super vividly in clinical case studies, particularly something called the authority fallacy. So there was this 27-year-old patient who came in with severe anxiety, all because her wearable device kept telling her she was getting poor sleep. Doctors brought her into a lab, tested her using clinical polysomnography, which is the gold standard, practically 100% accurate, and her sleep architecture was completely normal. But here's the wild part. She rejected the clinical medical findings. She chose to trust her consumer wearable instead, which relies on indirect sensors and is only about 50 to 60% accurate for sleep stages. She literally trusted a flawed algorithm over a doctor's diagnosis and her own rested body.
How does this happen? Well, it builds a vicious cycle called the AIE model. It starts with excessive cognitive attention to your metrics. That creates an intention to literally force yourself to sleep just to get a high score. That intention then translates into active physical effort. But here's the catch. Sleep requires a feeling of safety and zero effort. So this desperate striving triggers your autonomic nervous system. Your stress hormones spike, which prevents your body from winding down, ruins your sleep, gets you a lower score the next morning, and boom, reinforces the anxiety. You are literally blocking your own ability to rest.
So the crucial takeaway here is that fixing this isn't about better physical sleep hygiene, it is entirely psychological. A landmark study with over 1,000 participants proved that simply changing a patient's dysfunctional psychological beliefs about their sleep, like that rigid idea that you absolutely must get exactly 8 hours, mediates 64% of their improvement in insomnia severity. 64%. Changing your mental relationship with your biological data vastly outperforms just doing physical protocols.
So let's shift gears. Section 2. Soma versus noös. The philosophical pivot we need to make.
To truly escape this tracking anxiety, we desperately need a massive conceptual transition. We have to shift from solely tracking the soma, which is our biological, physical frame driven by homeostatic optimization, to acknowledging the noös. Drawing from the incredible philosopher and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, the noös represents our mind and our spirit, which is driven by intentional action and our will to meaning. When our tech only focuses on keeping our physical stress flat, it suppresses the healthy tension we actually need to feel purposeful, and that leads straight to chronic apathy and an existential vacuum.
And this brilliant concept brings us to what's known as the Frankl gap. Think of this as the variance between your physical resource capacity and your active, intentional direction. Look, if your biological battery is perfectly optimized at 100%, but your life's compass is pointing toward a totally unfulfilling destination, you aren't thriving.
You're just running faster in the exact wrong direction. A perfectly rested body means absolutely nothing if you don't have a meaningful reason to get out of bed in the first place. As Viktor Frankl observed, through the absolute most extreme situations of human survival, your will to meaning is infinitely more powerful for your resilience than any biological optimization score. If your intentional direction, your noetic intent, is highly aligned, you can maintain your psychological resilience and your agency even when your physical resources are dangerously depleted. At the end of the day, meaning trumps metrics.
All right, Section 3, the causal chain solution, and the move toward existential tracking. So how do we practically track this without losing our minds? Instead of passive, anxiety-inducing biometric scoring, there's a daily state tracker app called Causal Chain that uses a daily dual framework. It tracks the transition from your morning intent right through to your evening reflection. In the morning, you quickly record your noetic intent, your core values and goals for the day. Then in the evening, you do a somatic reflection across 5 qualitative pillars, backed up by just one constrained micronote. It beautifully blends your physical state with qualitative meaning, all without that high cognitive friction of staring at a blank journal page.
And it gets better. By using the app's causal mapper, you can actually trace the dependencies connecting hidden root causes to your visible mental symptoms. You get to trace exactly why an emotional state occurred, analyzing your own personal Frankl gap over time. You are shifting from passively staring at a terrible sleep score, feeling totally helpless, to actively acting like a detective for your own existential health.
Now, obviously, recording such intimate, personal reflections requires absolute trust. We all know consumer wearables constantly harvest our sensitive data to corporate cloud servers, right? Well, Causal Chain operates completely offline. It uses a strict local-first privacy stack built on Apple's Swift data framework. Zero data collection policy, it locks your qualitative data securely behind hardware biometric security like Face ID and the Secure Enclave. Your data belongs entirely to you, and it even has native CSV exports so you never get locked into just one ecosystem.
So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder today. Are you just optimizing your physical machine, or are you actually empowering your human intent? Maybe it's time to take off the wearable for a week, break that vicious cycle of orthosomnia, and try a daily state tracker like the Causal Chain app. Start measuring what actually makes you resilient, not just what makes you a well-rested machine. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, I challenge you to take a hard look at your own Frankl gap today.